I thought we had a perfect love through struggles, laughter, and our children, until one day, he said he no longer loved me. My world shattered, my heart broke, but what happened next changed everything. I had to fight for my marriage, my love, and my family. But let me take you back to the beginning, before heartbreak, before fear, before the moment that almost tore us apart. We both started from nothing. Life wasn't easy. Every day was a challenge: school, part-time work, family pressures, and the constant weight of survival. Yet, in the middle of all this chaos, we found each other. And when I say found each other, I mean it in the deepest sense of the word. Not just as partners, but as two people who understood each other's dreams, fears, and struggles in a way nobody else ever could. I remember the nights we stayed up, hunched over textbooks, our hands cramped from writing, our eyes tired but determined. Coffee cups littered the floor, and the room smelled faintly of ink and hope. He would glance at me, that small, quiet smirk on his lips, and say, "Don't worry, we'll make it through this." Those words, simple as they were, became my anchor. Somehow, they reminded me that no matter how hard life hit, we were in it together. Money was always tight. We didn't have luxuries, not even small ones. Every penny was counted, every little expense weighed, every opportunity seized. Yet, I never felt poor, because I had him. And in that, I found richness beyond anything money could buy. Our struggles weren't glamorous. They weren't stories people told at parties or wrote about in magazines. They were quiet, daily battles, waking up when every bone in your body begged for rest, working multiple jobs, helping family, supporting each other emotionally while carrying your own weight of stress. And yet, somehow, we found joy in those moments. A shared laugh after a long day, a small celebration for even minor victories, a simple hand squeeze in silent understanding. These were the moments that made our love real. I won't lie. There were times I doubted myself. Times I wondered if all the effort would ever lead to something lasting. The exhaustion was heavy, pressing down like a weight I couldn't shake. And yet, every time I looked at him, I felt a spark, a quiet fire that said, "We can do this. We will survive." That spark kept me going. That spark kept us together. We didn't just dream of surviving, we dreamed of thriving. We dreamed of building a life where love wasn't just words but action. Where every struggle, every sleepless night, every sacrifice became proof that our bond was unbreakable. Friends and family often questioned us, "Why push yourselves so hard? Why work so much?" They didn't understand. What they saw as hardship, we saw as preparation for our life together, for our future, for the family we would one day build. I remember a rainy night, one that stayed in my memory forever. The storm raged outside, the room dimly lit by a single lamp. Our books were scattered across the floor, papers sticking to my fingers from the damp air. I was exhausted, physically, emotionally, but he noticed. He didn't scold me for falling behind. He didn't rush me. Instead, he placed his hand gently on mine and whispered, "We're going to be okay. I promise." In that moment, something shifted. I realized that life would throw anything at us, but together, we could endure. Together, we could survive the storms, the challenges, the impossible. And slowly, through shared struggle, our love blossomed, not the kind of love that arrives with roses or grand gestures, but the kind that grows quietly in the trenches. The kind that sees you at your lowest and still chooses you. Every day, every hardship, every small victory became part of a story only we understood. It was in the gestures no one else noticed. Him bringing me tea when I'd barely slept, me helping him solve a problem he had been stuck on for hours, the laughter we shared at the silliest things. It was in the quiet moments, the whispers of dreams when no one else was listening, the comfort of knowing we weren't alone. Love built on struggle is a delicate fire. It warms, it sustains, but it requires tending. And in those early days, our fire was strong. Fierce enough to carry us forward, even when the world seemed determined to weigh us down. Sometimes, I wonder if anyone watching this has felt the same way, like love isn't just passion or romance, but endurance. Like it's about waking up day after day, choosing the person beside you, not just in words but in action. Because that's what our story was. Choosing each other through every obstacle, every tear, every victory. And even though I didn't know it then, those early struggles, the long nights, the whispered promises, the small victories, were preparing us for something much bigger. For life would not remain this simple forever. But in that moment, we were young, determined, and deeply in love. And that, I thought, would be enough. Have you ever felt like someone was your home, even when the world was falling apart around you? That was us. And little did I know, our biggest test was yet to come. Marriage is supposed to be the beginning of happily ever after, right? But what nobody tells you is that it's also the beginning of testing every bit of patience, understanding, and love you've ever had. After years of struggle, we finally tied the knot. I still remember that day, the fluttering excitement, the smiles that seemed too wide to be real, and the sense that somehow, despite everything, we had made it. We were young, hopeful, and full of dreams, believing that love alone could carry us through any storm. The first year of marriage felt like a dream. I continued working, contributing to our life, saving, and planning what we wanted to build together. Every small decision felt monumental. Every shared goal, every plan for the future, felt like a thread weaving our lives together. I would wake early to prepare breakfast, ensure the house was in order, and then head to work. He would leave with a promise, "I'll see you tonight, no matter what." And he always did. We celebrated little things, paying off bills, getting a promotion, even completing a day without arguing, and those tiny victories made us feel unstoppable. There was a rhythm to our life, a quiet harmony. But the real test began when our first baby arrived. I remember the first time I held our child in my arms. It was overwhelming, joy, fear, and love mingled in ways I could never have imagined. I decided to resign from my job to focus entirely on the baby and our home. At the time, it felt like the right choice. I wanted to give everything I had to our family. I wanted to create a home where love wasn't just spoken, but shown in every hug, every meal, every bedtime story. The days were long and exhausting. Sleep became a luxury, and I often found myself staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., thinking, am I doing enough? Am I enough? And yet, there was something comforting about the routine, the soft coos of our baby, the way my husband's eyes lit up when he saw us, the quiet moments of connection that made the sacrifices feel meaningful. Our life with the first child was beautiful, but it was also the beginning of change. Not in a dramatic way at first, just small shifts I didn't notice immediately. Perhaps it was fatigue, perhaps stress, but there were moments when I caught him staring into space, seemingly distant, and it sent a ripple of unease through me. Even then, I tried to reassure myself. It's just the stress of work, I thought. It's just adjusting to parenthood. And for a while, that explanation was enough. Then came the second child. 2 beautiful little humans who made our house feel like it was alive with energy. Laughter echoed through the rooms. Tiny hands held ours. Little shoes lined up by the door. For a while, life felt complete. I watched him with our children and felt proud not just of him, but of us. The love we had fought for seemed tangible in every smile, every giggle, every bedtime cuddle. Yet, amid all this joy, I began to notice cracks. The warmth in his eyes, the sparkle that once made my heart race, seemed to flicker. Conversations became shorter. Compliments, once freely given, became rare. And slowly, a sense of distance crept in, so subtle at first that I almost dismissed it as exhaustion or stress. I started asking myself questions I didn't want to answer. Is he bored? Is he unhappy? Am I failing as a wife? The fear lingered at the edges of my mind, gnawing silently. And though I tried to stay strong, to keep the home filled with love and laughter, a tiny seed of worry had taken root. I threw myself into the children, into the home, into creating a life that would feel secure and happy. I cooked his favorite meals. I decorated the house with care. I tried to anticipate his needs before he even asked. But the growing distance in his eyes began to shadow everything I did. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit alone, watching him sleep, and ask myself, is this what marriage is supposed to feel like? Are we really enough for each other? And yet, I refused to give up. I believed in us. I believed that our love, the same love that had survived years of struggle, could endure anything. It was during these quiet, reflective moments that I realized something crucial. Love isn't just about passion or romance. It's about presence, effort, choice. It's about showing up for someone every day, even when life is exhausting, even when the spark seems to dim. And I knew, deep in my heart, that if I wanted our story to continue, I had to fight for it. Not through anger, not through resentment, but through understanding, patience, and effort. I also realized that marriage, especially after children, changes people. You grow together, but you also grow in ways that can create distance if you're not careful. And I vowed to myself that I wouldn't let that distance grow between us without trying everything I could to bridge it. So, we carried on, day after day. I embraced the routine, cherished the little victories, and nurtured the love we had built. Little did I know that this was only the beginning, because life had a bigger test in store, one that would challenge everything I believed about love, loyalty, and the limits of endurance. Have you ever poured your heart into a relationship, only to wonder if it's enough? That's where I was, believing, hoping, and preparing for the storm I didn't yet see coming. I used to think happiness had a simple face. The laughter of my children, the warmth of our little home, and the quiet moments shared with the man I loved. I believed that once you have these things, nothing could ever break you. Life had settled into a rhythm that felt both comforting and magical. Our first child had brought an indescribable joy, and when our second arrived, it was as if our hearts had doubled in size. Every day was a whirlwind of little hands, tiny feet, and innocent laughter that filled every corner of our home. I would watch him, my husband, with our children, and something inside me swelled with pride. The way he gently held their hands, the way he laughed at their clumsy antics, the way he soothed them when they cried, it reminded me of why I had fallen in love with him in the first place. That was the man I had struggled alongside, the one I had dreamed with through every late night and every hardship. Our mornings were chaotic but beautiful. Breakfasts with spilled cereal, half-finished bottles, and sleepy smiles. School runs filled with laughter and playful scolding. Days at work for him, and at home for me, seemed to pass in a blink. Yet even in the routine, there was magic. Every milestone, first steps, first words, first giggles, felt monumental. Every little success our children achieved felt like a victory we shared together as a family. We celebrated birthdays with small but meaningful gestures. I would bake cakes late into the night, my husband decorating them with our children. We went for outings to parks, fairs, and the beach. The house smelled like home, warm, alive, filled with love. I often thought, this is the life I dreamed of, this is everything. And for a while, it truly felt perfect. I poured myself into motherhood, into making our home a sanctuary. I woke early to prepare breakfasts, packed lunches, organized school bags, and still managed to keep our home neat and welcoming. I balanced meals, playtime, and bedtime stories, all while trying to maintain some semblance of myself beyond the role of mother and wife. There were quiet evenings too, when the children were asleep, and we would sit together in the living room, sipping tea, holding hands, talking about dreams, memories, and sometimes nothing at all. Those moments felt sacred, like we were the only family in the world, cocooned from everything outside. And yet, even in this idyllic life, I began noticing tiny cracks. Little things at first. He was quieter than usual, a fleeting glance of distraction, a subtle withdrawal during conversations. At first, I brushed it off. I told myself he was tired, stressed, or simply lost in thought. But deep down, a small, persistent fear began to grow. Was something changing between us? Was I doing enough? Was I enough? I refused to let these thoughts dominate me, but they lingered, like shadows at the edges of our otherwise bright life. I continued to focus on our children, creating a home filled with laughter, warmth, and love. I cooked his favorite meals, ensured the house was welcoming, and tried to make every day a small celebration of family life. And yet, no matter how much effort I put in, there were moments when I felt invisible. When I would catch his eyes wandering, or sense the distance in his voice, my chest tightened with anxiety. I started wondering quietly, in the dark of night, is this the cost of a happy family? Does love fade once the children arrive? But even with these creeping doubts, I still felt grateful. Our home was alive, our children were thriving, and there was love in abundance even if it had started to feel a little different than before. I clung to these moments, hoping that the foundation we had built together would be strong enough to hold us through any storm. It was during this period, when life seemed happiest on the surface, that I didn't realize the first real test of our marriage was quietly approaching. Sometimes, the cracks start small, almost invisible, until one day they become impossible to ignore. And I could feel, somewhere deep inside, that the next chapter of our story would demand more than love. It would demand courage, resilience, and a willingness to fight for what we had built. Have you ever felt that tension beneath happiness, the quiet fear that something might be wrong even when everything seems perfect? That's exactly where I was, right on the edge of discovering that even joy has its challenges. Have you ever looked at someone you love and felt them slipping away, even though they're still right in front of you? That's the feeling that started creeping into my life, quietly, almost imperceptibly, until it couldn't be ignored. At first, it was nothing obvious. Just small things, a distracted glance here, a half-hearted smile there, conversations that once flowed easily now punctuated with silence. I noticed the subtle ways he began to withdraw, not with anger or words, but in the quiet absence of his presence. I would share a funny story or a memory from our past, expecting him to laugh, to join me, to feel that connection we once shared effortlessly. But instead, I was met with a distracted nod or a murmured hum. At first, I told myself it was just fatigue, stress, or the demands of work. But as days turned into weeks, I could no longer ignore the pattern. There were evenings when I would catch him staring at his phone longer than necessary, or lingering on social media pages that made my stomach twist with unease. I wanted to trust him, I truly did. I wanted to believe it was nothing. But deep down, a cold worry began to settle into my chest, whispering a question I didn't want to ask. Is there someone else? Or worse, is he falling out of love with me? One night, unable to bear the growing tension, I gathered my courage. The children were asleep, the house quiet, and I turned to him with a voice trembling slightly, trying to sound calm, yet filled with vulnerability. Why do you seem so distant lately? Why does it feel like you're pulling away from me? He looked at me for a long moment, and I could feel the weight of truth pressing down on us. Then he spoke, the words I will never forget, words that broke something inside me. You're no longer attractive to me. I want someone who excites me, who cares for me the way I need. I want the woman I fell in love with. My chest tightened. My heart felt like it was shattering into 1,000 pieces. All the sacrifices, all the love, all the years we had built together, was it not enough? Was I not enough? The fear I had tried to ignore suddenly became unbearable. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I forced myself to stay calm, to listen, to understand, not react. I realized that anger would solve nothing. What I needed was clarity. I needed to know why the man I had loved, the man I had fought alongside through every struggle, was telling me that I wasn't enough. It was a painful, humbling moment of realization. I had devoted myself to our children, to our home, to creating a life filled with love, but somewhere along the way, I had let myself fade. My focus had been on others, not on maintaining the spark between us. I understood then that love is not just about giving, it's also about nurturing oneself, about being seen, desired, and appreciated. But even in that heartbreak, I felt a spark of determination. I refused to let this be the end of our story. Our love, our family, our home, they were worth fighting for. And I made a silent promise to myself in that moment. I will fight for him. I will fight for us. And I will not fail. I also realized something important. This wasn't just about me or him individually. It was about the life we had built together, the bond we had nurtured through years of struggle and sacrifice. If I walked away or gave up now, I would be abandoning not just a marriage, but a lifetime of dreams, memories, and promises. And so, even as tears streamed down my face, even as my heart ached with the weight of his words, I began to plan my path forward. I needed to rediscover myself, not for anyone else, but for him, for our marriage, and for the family we had created. I needed to show him that love isn't stagnant, that it can grow, evolve, and be reignited if both hearts are willing. Have you ever faced the moment when someone you love seems to turn away, leaving you questioning everything? I want you to know this is not the end. Sometimes, it's the beginning of the fight for everything that truly matters. I sat alone that night, staring at the ceiling, and I asked myself the hardest question I've ever faced. How do you fight for love when the person you love says they no longer want you? The words still echoed in my mind, "You're no longer attractive to me. I want someone else." At first, they crushed me. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every ounce of love I had poured into our family felt dismissed, like it had never mattered. My heart ached, my hands shook, and my mind spun with disbelief. But amid the heartbreak, a spark ignited. Not anger, not resentment, but a quiet, burning determination. I will not give up on us. I will not let our love die. I realized that love is more than words, it's action. It's persistence. It's choosing each other even when it's painful, even when it's scary. I replayed our journey in my mind, from the struggles of our youth, the late-night studies, the sacrifices we made to build a future together, to the moment we held our first child in our arms. All of it mattered. And if our story was going to continue, it wasn't going to end with despair, it was going to end with effort, courage, and love that refused to quit. I knew the path forward wouldn't be easy. I couldn't force him to love me, but I could rediscover myself. I could reignite the spark that first drew him to me, not to please him, but to remind him and myself of the woman I still was, strong, vibrant, and full of love. So I made a plan. Step by step. First, I focused on myself physically. I joined a gym, not just to lose weight or appear attractive, but to feel alive in my own body again. Each drop of sweat, each aching muscle reminded me that I had control over something in my life, my own transformation. I began caring for my skin, experimenting with beauty routines, and reclaiming the confidence I had buried under years of motherhood and sacrifice. Second, I became intentional with my time and energy. I made sure to cook meals he loved, plan outings and small adventures, and create moments of connection that went beyond the routine of family life. I wanted him to see me not just as the mother of his children or the woman managing the household, but as a partner, a companion, someone vibrant and alive. Third, I looked inward. I reflected on my own happiness and mindset. I realized that no transformation could succeed without belief that I was worthy of love, desire, and attention. I refused to let his distance define my worth. I reminded myself daily, I am enough. I am strong. I can fight for this love. There were nights when I felt exhausted, when doubt crept back in, whispering, what if it's too late? What if he's already gone? But each time, I pushed the fear aside. I reminded myself that fighting for love isn't always dramatic. Sometimes, it's quiet, consistent effort, the small acts that speak louder than words. I also reflected on our marriage itself. Love alone isn't always enough. It must be nurtured, cultivated, and maintained. I realized that in focusing so much on the children and the home, I had neglected the very foundation that brought us together, each other. And now, I had a choice: wait passively for him to leave, or actively rebuild what we had lost. And so I chose action. I started planning little surprises, thoughtful gestures that reminded him of our love story. I dressed with care, not to impress the world, but to feel confident and alive in my own skin. I made time for him, intentionally, without guilt or distraction, showing that he mattered as much as our children and our home. But most importantly, I decided to confront the truth openly. I would ask him, without shame, without fear, what he truly wanted in a partner. What he needed to feel loved, desired, and happy. I knew this conversation could make or break us. I knew it could be painful, humiliating, or even heartbreaking. But I also knew that without honesty, without clarity, nothing could change. In the quiet of that night, I whispered to myself, I will do whatever it takes to save this love. I will rise, I will fight, and I will reclaim what we almost lost. And in that moment, I felt a sense of empowerment I had never experienced before. Not because I wanted to manipulate or control him, but because I had chosen myself, my love, and my family. I realized that the first step in saving a marriage is not to chase the other person, it is to reclaim your own power, your confidence, and your joy. I was determined. I would transform myself, yes, but more than that, I would transform our love. I would remind him of the bond we had built, the family we had created, and the woman he once fell in love with and who still existed, ready to fight for everything we had. Have you ever faced a moment where your love seemed lost, and the only way forward was through courage, effort, and self-belief? That's where I was, heartbroken, scared, but determined to fight for the life and love I knew we could reclaim. I realized that love is not just something you feel, it's something you cultivate. And if I wanted to save our marriage, I had to start by reclaiming myself. The days after my realization were not easy. Each morning felt like a battle against self-doubt and exhaustion. But I reminded myself that this wasn't just about appearance or superficial change, it was about becoming the best version of myself, the woman my husband had once adored, and the partner I wanted to be for the rest of our lives. I started with my body and health. I joined a gym, not just to regain my youthful shape, but to feel strong and alive. Every drop of sweat, every aching muscle reminded me that I could take control of something in my life. I felt empowered with every session, each one a quiet declaration: I am not giving up. I am fighting for us. Alongside physical transformation, I focused on beauty and self-care. I began experimenting with skincare routines, wearing outfits that made me feel confident, and embracing small rituals that made me feel noticed, not for others, but for myself. The act of caring for myself became a form of rebellion against the fear that had almost consumed me. But transformation wasn't only external. I worked on emotional strength and presence. I reflected on what it meant to be a partner, truly listening, being present, and creating moments of connection. I realized that in the busyness of motherhood and home, I had allowed our emotional intimacy to fade. Now, I wanted to reignite it. I started planning small surprises and thoughtful gestures. I would cook his favorite meals, set up cozy dinners for just the two of us, and organize outings he had always wanted to go on. I remembered the little things he loved, the music, the jokes, the shared experiences, and I made sure to bring them back into our daily lives. Each act, small as it seemed, was a message: I am here. I love you. I haven't given up. I also made an effort to listen and communicate differently. I asked questions about his day, his dreams, and his desires, not in a demanding way, but in a caring, curious way. I wanted him to feel heard, appreciated, and understood. And slowly, I noticed subtle changes. He began responding, smiling more, laughing at our shared jokes, lingering a little longer during conversations. But the most important step came when I directly addressed our relationship. I asked him, gently, what he truly wanted in a partner, what he felt was missing, and what would make him happy again. I listened without interrupting, without defending, without anger. And in that moment, I realized that love requires humility, patience, and understanding. We had honest conversations about our needs, fears, and desires. He admitted that he felt neglected, that he missed the excitement and attention we once shared, and that he still loved me but didn't know how to reconnect. I told him I was willing to do whatever it took, not to change who I am, but to nurture our bond, rebuild intimacy, and create the happiness we both deserved. The process wasn't instantaneous. Some days were frustrating, some nights I felt exhausted and doubted whether my efforts were enough. But I reminded myself that transformation is gradual, and love requires persistence. Every effort, every thoughtful action, every smile and touch was a step toward rebuilding what we had almost lost. I began to reclaim the romance in subtle ways. Surprise date nights, small gifts, notes hidden in his pockets, and even simple gestures like holding his hand while watching TV, each one rekindled the connection we had taken for granted. I dressed up for him, not for the world, not to prove anything, but to remind him that I was still the woman he had fallen in love with. Slowly, I saw change in him too. The distant looks began to fade, replaced by warmth and curiosity. He started complimenting me again, noticing the small changes, acknowledging my effort, and expressing appreciation in ways he hadn't in months. I could see that the spark, though dimmed, was still alive. One evening, after a day filled with laughter, shared chores, and playful moments with the children, I finally asked him gently, "Is there anything else you want in a partner? Anything I haven't done that would make you happy?" He looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, his eyes were filled with emotion. He reached out, held my hand, and whispered words I had longed to hear. "You are my world. I can't imagine life without you. You're everything I ever wanted, and more." Tears streamed down my face, not from sadness, but from relief, gratitude, and love. The fight had been worth it. We had both grown, both changed, and yet, our bond had survived. I realized that love isn't a static feeling, it's a journey, an effort, a choice we make every day. Have you ever fought for love, not with anger or demands, but with understanding, patience, and self-belief? That's where I was, and it saved everything I hold dear. There are moments in life when you realize that love, if fought for, can return even stronger than before. That's the moment I lived, and it changed everything. After weeks of effort, self-reflection, and small gestures, something remarkable began to happen. The distance that had once threatened to tear us apart started to dissolve. Our conversations grew longer, filled with laughter, understanding, and the warmth we had thought was lost. His eyes, once distant, now held the sparkle I remembered from our early days. I remember one quiet evening, after the children had gone to bed, when we sat together on the balcony, sipping tea. The night air was cool, the city lights twinkling below us, and for the first time in months, it felt like we were truly together. I took a deep breath and said softly, "I've tried to understand, to listen, to be the partner you need. And I hope we can find our way back to each other." He looked at me, his eyes glistening, and took my hand in his. "You're my world. I can't live without you. I was wrong to let distance come between us. You've always been everything I ever needed." In that moment, all the pain, all the tears, all the nights of doubt and fear melted away. We hugged, holding each other tightly, knowing that this embrace wasn't just physical, it was a reconnect ion of hearts, a renewal of our promise to each other. The next days and weeks were filled with joyful rediscovery. We laughed more freely, held hands without reason, and spent time intentionally together. Outings, little surprises, shared dinners, and playful moments with the children brought our family closer than ever. I realized that reconciliation isn't about erasing the past, it's about learning from it. We talked openly about our feelings, our fears, and the mistakes we had made. We promised to never let neglect or distance threaten our love again. And in that promise, I felt a peace and happiness that went beyond anything I had imagined. Our children noticed the change too. Their laughter filled the house in a way that felt brighter, warmer, and more alive. The love between us wasn't just ours anymore, it radiated through the family, teaching our children about perseverance, forgiveness, and the strength of enduring love. I also discovered something about myself in this journey. I had learned that love isn't passive, it's active. It requires effort, attention, and courage. It demands self-belief, patience, and the willingness to grow, even when it's painful. By fighting for our marriage, I had not only saved our love but had also found a deeper strength within myself. One evening, as we tucked the children into bed and closed the door behind them, he turned to me and said softly, "You are gorgeous, amazing, and my everything. I see you, truly see you, in every way. Thank you for never giving up on us." Tears filled my eyes, but this time they were tears of joy, of triumph, and of gratitude. We had faced the storm together, navigated the darkness, and emerged stronger, closer, and more in love than ever. Have you ever fought for love and found it waiting for you at the end of the struggle? That's my story. And I hope it reminds you that love is worth fighting for, even when it seems impossible. Looking back now, I see our journey not as a series of struggles, but as a testament to love, resilience, and growth. Every tear, every sleepless night, every fear, it all led us to a place of deeper understanding and true happiness. I often think about the moments that brought us to the edge, the nights of doubt, the quiet distance, the words that almost broke us. Those moments were painful, yes, but they were also necessary. They taught me that love is not just a feeling you wait for, it's a commitment you work for, every single day. Through this journey, I learned some truths I wish everyone could understand. It's easy to believe that love alone will sustain a relationship. But real love is action. It's the patience to listen, the courage to apologize, the willingness to change, and the persistence to show up, even when it's hard. I realized that in focusing entirely on others, I had forgotten myself. Nurturing your own mind, body, and spirit isn't vanity, it's the foundation that allows you to give love freely and fully. The moment I truly listened, without judgment or defensiveness, we began to heal. Honest conversations about needs, desires, and fears can transform a fragile relationship into a stronger, more intimate bond. I was tired, overwhelmed, and doubting myself, but change is never too late. Whether it's physical, emotional, or relational, transformation can reignite love and restore connection. Our children witnessed our struggle and our triumph. They learned that love is active, that perseverance matters, and that family is built not just on moments of joy, but on overcoming challenges together. Now, as I watch our children laugh, hear my husband's laughter in the kitchen, and feel his hand in mine, I know we have reached a deeper level of happiness than we ever imagined. The love we fought for isn't the same as before, it's stronger, wiser, and more grateful. I want to tell every woman and every partner watching this, you are powerful. You are capable. You have the strength to fight for love if it's worth it. But remember, that fight begins with you. Believe in yourself, embrace your worth, and take the steps that will ignite the love and happiness you deserve. Love isn't easy, and life will test you, but when you refuse to give up, when you choose effort, growth, and understanding, you can create a love story that serves.